Clara Sullivan pressed her forehead against the stagecoach window and watched the only world she'd ever known disappear behind a cloud of dust. 24 years old, no family, no reputation, no future. The letter in her pocket was already worn soft from reading. Position available. Widower with 3 children. Montana Territory. No questions asked. No questions asked. That was what her life had come to. She didn't cry. She'd promised herself that much. The tears could come later when no one was watching. If you want to follow Clara's journey to the end, subscribe to our channel and comment what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story travels. The stagecoach jerked to a stop so hard, Clara nearly fell off the wooden seat. Copper Creek. The driver called out, not bothering to turn around. End of the line, miss. She gathered her single bag, everything she owned, packed into worn leather, and climbed down onto the dusty street. The Montana sun hit her like a physical blow, so bright and hot it made her eyes water. Or maybe that was something else. You the one going to Garrett's place? Clara turned. A woman stood on the boardwalk, maybe 55 or 60, with gray-streaked hair pulled back tight, and eyes that looked like they'd seen everything twice and weren't impressed by any of it. Yes, ma'am. I'm Clara Sullivan. The woman looked her up and down, slow and deliberate. Martha Jenkins. I'm Sam Garrett's neighbor. He asked me to fetch you. She paused. You're younger than I expected. I'm 24. Like I said, younger than I expected. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady. Is that a problem? Martha didn't answer. She just turned and walked toward a wagon hitched at the end of the street. Come on then, it's a long ride. They traveled in silence for nearly an hour. The valley opened up around them, vast and golden under the summer sky. Clara had never seen so much empty space in her life. In Boston, there was always something buildings people noise. Here there was nothing but grass and sky and the distant shapes of mountains. You ever worked a ranch before? Martha asked finally. No, ma'am. You know anything about children? I was a governess. In Boston. Was. Martha's voice was flat. What happened? Clara's hands tightened on her bag. I'd rather not say. I'm sure you wouldn't. Martha flicked the reins, urging the horses faster. But I'm going to tell you something, Miss Sullivan. Sam Garrett is a good man. He's been through hell these past 3 years, and those children of his have been through worse. If you're here to cause trouble, I'm not. Or if you're running from something that's going to follow you here, I'm not running from anything. The lie tasted bitter in Clara's mouth. I'm just looking for honest work. Martha studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded just once. We'll see. The Garrett Ranch came into view as the sun began its slow descent toward the mountains. Clara saw the barn first, then the house, 2 stories, white paint peeling in places, a porch that wrapped around the front. Fences stretched out in every direction, and cattle dotted the distant fields like brown spots on a golden quilt. It's bigger than I thought, Clara said. Sam built most of it himself, him and Catherine. Martha's voice softened on the name. Before she passed. How did she? That's not my story to tell. Martha pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house. He's probably in the barn this time of day. Go on, I'll bring your bag. Clara climbed down her legs stiff from the long ride. She smoothed her dress, her best one though it was worn at the cuffs and faded from too many washings, and walked toward the barn. The doors were open, and she could hear someone inside. A man's voice, low and steady, talking to a horse. Easy now. Easy. I know it hurts, but you gotta let me look at it. Clara stopped in the doorway, letting her eyes adjust to the dim light. A man knelt beside a horse, his back to her, examining its leg. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair curling at the collar of his worn shirt. His hands moved over the horse's leg with surprising gentleness. Mr. Garrett. He stood and turned in one motion, his hand going to his hip where a gun might have been if he'd been wearing one. His face was hard-weathered with lines around his eyes that spoke of too many years squinting into the sun, or too many years of grief. "You're the Sullivan woman." Not Miss Sullivan, not even Clara, just the Sullivan woman. "Yes, sir, Clara Sullivan." He looked at her the same way Martha had slow assessing, measuring her against some standard she couldn't see. His eyes dropped to her hands. "Show me your palms." "I'm sorry." "Your palms. Hold them out." Clara hesitated, then extended her hands, palms up. He crossed the barn in 3 long strides and took her wrists, turning her hands toward the light. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his grip was careful. "Soft," he said. "You ever done hard work? I can learn. Can you?" He dropped her hands and stepped back. "I've got 3 children who need feeding, clothes that need washing, a house that needs cleaning, and 100 head of cattle that need tending. I don't have time to teach you how to do every little thing. I'm a fast learner, Mr. Garrett. Sam." He turned back to the horse. "Nobody calls me Mr. Garrett." "Sam, then." Clara took a breath, steadying herself. "I know I'm not what you expected. I know I don't look like much. But I came a long way to be here, and I intend to earn my keep." He was quiet for a moment, running his hand along the horse's flank. When he spoke, his voice was different, tired, heavy. "My wife died 3 years ago. Left me with 3 kids and a ranch I can barely hold together. The oldest, Emma, she's 11. She's been trying to be her mama ever since Catherine passed, and it's killing her. Will's 8. He's angry at everyone and everything, and I don't know how to reach him anymore. Rosie's 3. She doesn't remember her mother at all." He turned to face her, and Clara saw something in his eyes she recognized, the same thing she saw in the mirror every morning: exhaustion, grief, and underneath it all, a desperate kind of hope that he was trying hard to hide. "I don't need a wife," he said. "I need help. Can you do that? Can you just help?" "Yes." Clara's voice was steady. "I can do that." He nodded. "Martha will show you your room. Supper's at 6. Don't be late." He turned back to the horse, dismissing her. Clara walked out of the barn, her heart pounding. She'd expected coldness, but not this, not the rawness of his pain, not the weight of responsibility she could see crushing him. She found Martha waiting on the porch. "Well?" the older woman asked. "He's—" Clara searched for the right word. "He's very direct." Martha snorted. "That's one word for it. Come on, I'll show you where you'll be sleeping." The room was small, but clean. A bed, a dresser, a window that looked out over the valley. Martha set Clara's bag on the floor and turned to leave. "Mrs. Jenkins." Martha stopped. "The children. What should I expect?" For the first time, something like sympathy crossed Martha's weathered face. "Emma will hate you. Will might try to hurt you. And Rosie—" She paused. "Rosie will break your heart." "Why?" "Because she'll love you, and you'll have to decide if you can love her back." Martha opened the door. "Supper's at 6. I'd suggest not being late." The kitchen was hot, the wood stove radiating heat that made Clara's dress stick to her back. She stood in the doorway watching the chaos unfold. A girl stood at the stove, stirring something in a pot. She was thin, too thin, with honey-colored hair pulled back in a messy braid. Her dress was too big for her, hanging off her shoulders like it had been made for someone else. Because it had been, Clara realized. It had been her mother's. A boy sat at the table, kicking his feet against the chair legs, his face smeared with dirt. A scruffy dog lay at his feet, panting in the heat, and in the corner, clutching a ragged stuffed rabbit, stood the smallest one. Dark curly hair, blue eyes watching Clara with a mixture of curiosity and fear. "You must be the new one," the girl said without turning around. "I'm Clara, Clara Sullivan." "I know who you are." The girl still didn't look at her. "I'm Emma, that's Will. The baby's Rosie." "I ain't a baby." Rosie said, her small voice defiant. I'm not a baby, Emma corrected automatically. That's what I said. Clara bit back a smile. It's nice to meet all of you. Emma finally turned. Her eyes were sharp, assessing so much older than 11. Pa says you're here to help. We don't need help. I've been taking care of things just fine. I'm sure you have. I have. Emma's chin lifted. I can cook and clean and take care of Rosie and Will. I've been doing it for 3 years. That's a lot of responsibility for someone your age. I'm not a child. Clara looked at her, at the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her thin shoulders, the way she held herself like she was bracing for a blow. No, Clara said quietly. I don't suppose you are. Something flickered in Emma's eyes, surprise maybe, or something closer to recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by cold distrust. Supper's almost ready. You can set the table. Plates are in the cupboard. It wasn't a request. Clara nodded and moved to the cupboard, finding mismatched plates and cups. As she set them on the table, she felt Will's eyes on her. You talk funny, he said. I'm from Boston, back east. Why'd you come here? Will, Emma said sharply. Don't be rude. I'm just asking. Clara set the last plate down and met Will's gaze. He had his father's dark eyes, his father's stubborn jaw. I came because I needed a new start. What's wrong with your old start? Will. It's all right. Clara pulled out a chair and sat down across from him. My old start didn't work out the way I planned. Sometimes that happens. Did you do something bad? The question hit her like a punch to the chest. She saw it again. The young man's face twisted with anger, his mother's cold eyes, the door closing behind her as she was escorted out. No, she said. I didn't do anything bad. But sometimes people believe lies more easily than they believe the truth. Will frowned, processing this. Then he shrugged. Pa says liars get what they deserve. Will, that's enough? Sam's voice came from the doorway. He'd washed up his hair, damp, his shirt changed. Leave Miss Sullivan alone. I was just talking to her. Well, stop. Sam crossed to the stove and looked into the pot. Smells good, Emma. Emma's face softened just for a moment. It's Mama's recipe, the one with the potatoes. I know. Sam's hand rested briefly on his daughter's shoulder. She'd be proud of you. Emma's eyes went bright, but she blinked hard and turned back to the stove. It's ready. Everyone sit down. They ate in near silence. Clara watched the family dynamic unfold, Emma serving everyone before herself, Will inhaling his food like he was afraid someone would take it, Rosie pushing her potatoes around her plate while clutching her rabbit with one hand, and Sam. Sam watched his children with a fierce, desperate love that made Clara's chest ache. He watched them like he was afraid they might disappear. Miss Clara, Clara looked down. Rosie had scooted her chair closer, her blue eyes wide. Yes, sweetheart. Are you gonna stay? The table went quiet. Emma's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Will's kicking feet went still. Sam's eyes met Clara's across the table. I'm going to try, Clara said carefully. The last one didn't stay. Rosie's voice was matter-of-fact. She said Will was too much trouble, and Emma was too bossy, and I cried too much at night. Rosie. Emma's voice was sharp. Don't. It's true. She said it. I heard her. Clara looked at the little girl, at the way she clutched her rabbit, at the matter-of-fact acceptance of rejection in her voice, and felt something crack open in her chest. Well, Clara said, keeping her voice light. I think Will is supposed to be trouble. He's 8. And Emma isn't bossy, she's a leader. There's a difference. What about me crying? Clara reached out and gently touched Rosie's dark curls. Everyone cries sometimes, even grown-ups. There's nothing wrong with crying. Rosie stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, she scooted her chair even closer until her small shoulder pressed against Clara's arm. I like you, she announced. Rosie. Emma's voice cracked. You don't even know her. I like her anyway. Sam stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Emma, help your sister get ready for bed. We'll go feed Dusty. Miss Sullivan, I'll show you where everything is. He walked out of the kitchen without waiting for a response. Clara glanced at the children. Emma's hostile glare, Will's suspicious frown, Rosie's small, hopeful smile, and followed him. The tour was brief and businesslike. The pantry, the root cellar, the chicken coop, the well. Water needs to be brought in every morning. Sam said, his voice flat. Emma's been doing it, but it's too heavy for her. I want you to take over. Of course. Chickens need feeding at dawn, eggs collected before breakfast. I understand. And the children. He stopped walking, turning to face her in the fading light. Emma doesn't trust anyone. Don't take it personal. Will's going to test you. Push back, but don't be cruel. And Rosie... He stopped, his jaw tightening. Mrs. Jenkins said Rosie will break my heart, Clara said quietly. Martha talks too much. But his voice had lost its edge. Rosie's mother died giving birth to her. She doesn't remember Catherine at all. Sometimes I catch her looking at other women in town, mothers with their children, and I can see her trying to figure out what she's missing. Clara's throat tightened. That must be hard, for all of you. We get by. His voice was rough. That's all anyone can do. Get by. They stood in silence as the sun sank below the mountains, painting the valley in shades of gold and rose. Clara had never seen anything so beautiful, or so lonely. Why did you really come here, Miss Sullivan? She looked at him, at his weathered face, his guarded eyes, the grief that sat on his shoulders like a physical weight. Because no one else would have me, she said honestly. Because I have nowhere else to go. And because... She hesitated. Because when I read your advertisement, I thought maybe this was a place where I could start over. Where no one would know the things they say about me back home. What things? The words stuck in her throat. I was a governess, for a wealthy family. Their son... She stopped, shaking her head. He said things that weren't true, and they believed him. What kind of things? Clara met his eyes. The kind of things that ruin a woman's reputation forever. Sam studied her for a long moment. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of understanding maybe, or recognition. People talk, he said finally. They'll talk about you being here. Unmarried woman living under the same roof as a widower. They'll say things. I know. Does that bother you? Clara thought about the whispers that had followed her through Boston, the doors that had closed, the friends who had turned away. No, she said. I stopped caring what people say a long time ago. Sam nodded slowly. All right then. He turned toward the house. Get some sleep. Tomorrow starts early. She watched him walk away, his shoulders bowed under the weight of everything he carried. A man trying to hold his family together. A man drowning and too proud to ask for help. She knew that feeling. She knew it well. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. The bed was comfortable enough, the room quiet, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She kept seeing Emma's hostile eyes, Will's suspicious frown, Rosie's small hand reaching for hers. And Sam. The way he'd looked at her when she'd told him the truth. Not with judgment or suspicion, but with something that might have been understanding. Around midnight, she heard it. A soft sound barely audible through the thin walls. Crying. Clara got out of bed and pulled on her robe. She crept down the hall, following the sound to a door that stood slightly ajar. Rosie's room. She pushed the door open gently. The little girl sat in her bed, clutching her rabbit tears streaming down her face. Rosie, sweetheart, what's wrong? Rosie looked up, her blue eyes swimming. I had a bad dream. Clara crossed to the bed and sat on the edge. Do you want to tell me about it? I dreamed everybody went away. Rosie's voice was small, broken. Emma and Will and Pa. They all went away and I was all alone and nobody came back. Clara's heart clenched. She reached out and gathered the little girl into her arms, holding her close. "It was just a dream," she whispered. "Nobody's going anywhere." "Promise?" The word hung in the air between them. Clara knew she shouldn't make promises she might not be able to keep. She knew that anything could happen, that life was uncertain and cruel and full of broken promises. But she looked at this small, trembling child, a child who had lost her mother before she could even remember her, and she couldn't bring herself to say anything else. "I promise," she whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Rosie's arms tightened around her neck. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" "Of course." She held the little girl until Rosie's breathing slowed and her small body went heavy with sleep. Then she laid her gently back against the pillows, tucking the blanket around her. "Sleep well, sweetheart," she whispered. She turned to leave and found Sam standing in the doorway. His face was unreadable in the darkness, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands hung at his sides, like he didn't know what to do with them. "She has nightmares," he said quietly. "Most nights. She dreamed everyone left her." Sam's jaw tightened. "I know. She tells me. Every time." "Have you tried?" "I've tried everything." His voice was rough, exhausted. "I've tried holding her. I've tried talking to her. I've tried sleeping in the chair by her bed. Nothing helps. She still wakes up crying." Clara looked back at the sleeping child, at the tear tracks still visible on her round cheeks. "Maybe she just needs to know someone will be there," she said softly. "Every time. No matter what." "That's a lot of nights, Miss Sullivan." "I know." She met his eyes. "I'm not afraid of long nights." Something passed between them in the darkness, a current of understanding, of shared exhaustion, of two people who had both known loneliness and loss. "You should get some sleep," Sam said finally. "Morning comes early." "I know." He turned to go, then stopped. "Miss Sullivan." "Yes. Thank you for staying with her." Before she could respond, he was gone, his footsteps fading down the hall. Clara stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching Rosie sleep. Then she went back to her room and lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. She'd been here less than a day. She'd already made promises she might not be able to keep. She'd already let a little girl's arms wrap around her heart. Martha was right, she thought. Rosie was going to break her heart. But as Clara finally drifted toward sleep, she realized something. Maybe that was all right. Maybe having her heart broken meant she still had a heart left to break. And maybe, just maybe, this was exactly where she was supposed to be. Dawn came too soon. Clara woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and the smell of coffee drifting up from the kitchen. Her body ached from the long journey, and her eyes felt gritty from lack of sleep, but she forced herself out of bed. She'd promised to earn her keep. She intended to start now. She dressed quickly and made her way downstairs. Emma was already in the kitchen, standing at the stove, with the same tired determination Clara had seen the night before. "Good morning," Clara said. Emma didn't turn around. "Pa already left for the fields. Breakfast is almost ready." "Let me help." "I don't need help." Clara took a breath. "I know you don't need it. But I'm here and I'm going to help anyway. So you can either tell me what to do or I can just start guessing." Emma's shoulders stiffened. For a long moment she didn't move. Then slowly she turned. "The eggs need to be collected. Chicken coops out back." "I know. Your father showed me last night." "Then go collect them." Emma's voice was sharp, but her eyes looked almost hopeful. Like she was waiting to see if Clara would actually do it. "All right." Clara headed for the door. "I'll be back in 10 minutes. The chicken coop was hot and smelled like straw and droppings. Clara had never collected eggs in her life, but she'd watched other people do it, and how hard could it be? Very hard, as it turned out. The chickens did not appreciate her intrusion. They clucked and flapped and pecked at her hands, and by the time she'd gathered a dozen eggs, her arms were covered in small scratches. But she'd done it. She carried the basket back to the kitchen and set it on the counter with what she hoped was casual confidence. Emma looked at the eggs, then at Clara's scratched arms. Something flickered across her face. Surprise maybe, or grudging respect. "You got pecked," she said. "I noticed. You're supposed to talk to them. The chickens. It calms them down." "What am I supposed to say?" "I don't know. Anything. Good morning. Nice feathers. Whatever." Emma turned back to the stove, but Clara could have sworn she saw the ghost of a smile on the girl's lips. It wasn't much. It wasn't trust. But it was something. Will came down for breakfast with his dog at his heels and his hair sticking up in every direction. He looked at Clara with the same suspicion as the night before, but he didn't say anything hostile. Progress, Clara thought. Rosie came down last, rubbing her eyes, her rabbit tucked under one arm. When she saw Clara, her face lit up. "You stayed," she said. "I told you I would." Rosie climbed onto the chair next to Clara and pressed against her side. Emma's expression tightened, but she didn't say anything. They ate breakfast together, eggs and biscuits and coffee that was too strong but still good. Will asked Clara questions about Boston, about trains, about whether she'd ever seen the ocean. Emma stayed quiet, watching, waiting. And Rosie held Clara's hand under the table, her small fingers wrapped tight around Clara's palm. When breakfast was over, Clara stood to clear the dishes. "I'll do that," Emma said quickly. "We'll do it together." Emma opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She looked at Clara for a long moment, really looked like she was seeing her for the first time. "Fine," she said finally. "Together." It was still only morning. Clara had been at the Garrett Ranch for less than a day. She had weeks, maybe months of work ahead of her, of earning trust, of proving herself, of building something from nothing. But as she stood at the sink next to Emma, washing dishes in silence, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Small and fragile, easily broken. But there. And for now that was enough. The snake was coiled in the corner of her room. Clara saw it the moment she opened her eyes that morning. A thick brown body pressed against the wall, its head raised, tongue flicking. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Every muscle in her body screamed at her to run, to scream, to do something. She'd been terrified of snakes since she was a child, since her brother had chased her through the garden with one, and she'd fallen and scraped her knees bloody. Her brother, dead now. Drowned in the river when he was only 10. She couldn't think about that, not now. The snake hadn't moved. It watched her with flat, cold eyes, waiting. Clara forced herself to breathe. In, out, in, out. She could hear footsteps in the hallway. Light ones. A child's. Will. Of course it was Will. She understood now. This was the test. The last woman had screamed and run, probably. Had given Will exactly what he wanted, proof that she didn't belong here, that she would leave just like everyone else. Clara wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. She slid out of bed slowly, keeping her movements calm and deliberate. Her hands were shaking. God, they were shaking so badly, but she clasped them together and approached the corner. "All right," she said softly, more to herself than the snake. "All right. Let's get you outside where you belong." She grabbed her shawl from the chair and used it to scoop the snake up in one quick motion. It twisted against the fabric, and her stomach lurched, but she didn't drop it. She walked to the window, pushed it open, and shook the snake out onto the ground below. Then she stood there for a long moment, gripping the windowsill, trying to stop her hands from trembling. The door creaked open behind her. "You didn't scream." Clara turned. Will stood in the doorway, his dark eyes wide with something that might have been surprise. Or disappointment. "No," she said. "I didn't. The last one screamed so loud Pa came running from the barn. I'm not the last one." Will stared at her. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite spit out. "Ain't you scared of snakes?" "Terrified." Clara kept her voice steady. But being scared doesn't mean you have to scream. That don't make sense. Sure it does. She crossed her arms, meeting his gaze. Being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid, Will. It means you're afraid, and you do the thing anyway. He frowned, processing this. Then his chin lifted, defiant. I wasn't trying to scare you off. Yes, you were. I wasn't. Will. She waited until he looked at her. I know what you're doing, and it's not going to work. I'm not leaving. Something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or hope. Then it was gone, replaced by the same sullen anger he wore like armor. We'll see, he said, and turned and walked away. Clara let out a long breath. Her hands were still shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs and willed them to stop. One test down. She had a feeling there would be more. Breakfast was a disaster. Clara had offered to cook, wanting to give Emma a break. The girl had agreed reluctantly, watching from the doorway with her arms crossed and her expression skeptical. The eggs burned. The biscuits came out flat and hard as rocks. The coffee was so weak, it looked like dirty water. Emma didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her silence was louder than any words. I'm sorry, Clara said, staring at the ruined meal. I thought I knew how to. It's fine. Emma was already at the stove, scraping the burned eggs into the slop bucket. I'll make more. Let me help. You've helped enough. The words hit Clara like a slap. She stood there useless, watching Emma work with the quick efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for years, because she had been, since she was 8 years old. Emma, Mama used to make eggs with cheese. Emma's voice was flat, controlled. She'd fold them over real gentle so they stayed soft. And her biscuits were light as clouds. Pa said they were the best he'd ever tasted. Clara's throat tightened. I'm sure they were. You can't make them like she did. Emma finally turned, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Nobody can. I know. Then why are you trying? Clara didn't have an answer for that. She just stood there helpless, watching this child who had been forced to grow up too fast, who was trying so hard to hold on to her mother's memory. I'm not trying to replace her, Clara said quietly. I couldn't even if I wanted to. I'm just trying to help. We don't need your help. Maybe not. Clara took a step closer. But I'm going to give it anyway. And you can hate me for it, Emma. You can hate me as much as you need to. But I'm not going anywhere. Emma's jaw trembled. For a moment, Clara thought she might cry. Then her expression hardened, and she turned back to the stove. Breakfast will be ready in 10 minutes, she said. Try not to burn anything else. The day settled into a rhythm. Not an easy one, but a rhythm nonetheless. Clara rose before dawn to collect eggs and draw water from the well. She learned to talk to the chickens, ridiculous as it felt, and they did seem to calm down. She helped Emma with meals, though the girl rarely let her do more than chop vegetables or wash dishes. Will watched her, constantly waiting for her to fail. He left burrs in her shoes, hid her hairbrush, let the pigs out of their pen, so she had to chase them across the yard. Each time Clara cleaned up the mess without complaint. Rosie followed her everywhere. The little girl had attached herself to Clara like a shadow, holding her hand, asking endless questions, climbing into her lap whenever Clara sat down. Why is the sky blue? Why do horses have big teeth? Why does Emma get mad when I ask about Mama? That last question made Clara's heart ache. Emma misses your Mama very much, she said carefully. Sometimes when we miss people, it hurts to talk about them. Do you miss anyone? Clara thought of her brother, of her father dead when she was 16, of the mother who had chosen a new husband over her own daughter. Yes, she said. I miss a lot of people. Will they come visit? No, sweetheart. They won't. Rosie was quiet for a moment. Then she wrapped her small arms around Clara's neck and squeezed. That's okay, she said. I'll be your family now. Clara had to turn away so Rosie wouldn't see her cry. A week after Clara arrived, Martha Jenkins came to visit. Clara was hanging laundry on the line when the older woman's wagon rattled up the drive. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked over to meet her. "Mrs. Jenkins, this is a surprise." "Thought I'd check in." Martha climbed down from the wagon, her eyes sweeping over the yard. "See how you're settling in." "I'm managing." "Are you?" It wasn't a question. Martha's gaze fixed on Clara, sharp and assessing. "The children giving you trouble?" "Nothing I can't handle. We'll put a snake in your room." Clara blinked. "How did you know that word travels fast around here?" Martha's expression didn't change. "Whole valley's been talking about the new woman at the Garrett place." Clara's stomach tightened. "What are they saying?" "What do you think they're saying?" Martha stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Single woman, no family, no references, shows up out of nowhere to live with a widower and his children. People have opinions, Miss Sullivan." "I don't care about people's opinions." "Maybe you should." Martha's voice was hard. "This ain't Boston. Out here, reputation is everything. Sam's already had a hard time since Catherine passed. He don't need more trouble." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm not trouble." "That remains to be seen." Martha studied her for a long moment. "What happened back east? The real story." "I already told you. You told me you were a governess and something went wrong. That ain't a story. That's an excuse." Clara's hands clenched at her sides. She could feel the old shame rising up, the familiar burn of injustice and humiliation. "The family I worked for had a son," she said quietly. "He was 19. I was 23. He decided he wanted me, and I told him no." Martha's expression didn't change. And he told his mother I'd been the one pursuing him, that I'd thrown myself at him and been rejected. She believed him." Clara's voice was bitter. "Why wouldn't she? I was nobody. He was her precious boy." "So they let you go." "They ruined me." Clara's voice cracked. "They told everyone what he'd said. No one would hire me. No one would even look at me. I had to leave everything I'd ever known because a spoiled boy couldn't take no for an answer." Silence stretched between them. Martha's face was unreadable. "That's a hard story," she said finally. "It's the truth." "I believe you." Martha's voice softened, just slightly. "But the truth don't always matter out here. What matters is what people think. And right now, people are thinking all kinds of things about you. Let them think." "Easy to say, harder to live with." Martha turned toward her wagon. "I came to warn you, Miss Sullivan. The Blakes have been asking questions. Cornelius Blake owns half this valley, and he's had his eye on Sam's land for years. If he thinks he can use you to make trouble—" "What kind of trouble?" Martha looked back at her. "The kind that ruins people. Watch yourself." She climbed into the wagon and drove away, leaving Clara standing alone with the laundry basket at her feet and a cold knot of fear in her stomach. That evening, Clara made a mistake. The children had been hungry after playing outside all afternoon, and dinner wasn't ready yet. Emma was in her room with a headache, and Sam was still out in the fields. So Clara gave Will and Rosie bread with butter and honey to tide them over. She didn't think anything of it. They were children. They were hungry. It seemed like the obvious thing to do. She was wrong. Sam came in just as the children were finishing their snack. He took one look at the plates, at the crumbs on the table, at Rosie's honey-smeared face, and his expression went dark. "What's this?" "They were hungry. I gave them something to hold them over until—" "Dinner's at 6. His voice was hard. "That's the rule. We eat at 6. "I know, but—" "No buts." Sam grabbed a rag and wiped Rosie's face, his movements rough. "We have rules for a reason. If they fill up on bread, they won't eat their dinner. They're children, not soldiers." Sam straightened, his eyes flashing. "What did you say?" Clara's heart was pounding, but she didn't back down. "I said they're children. They were hungry. I fed them. I don't see the problem." "The problem is, you've been here a week, And you think you know better than me how to raise my own kids. I don't think that. Then why are you questioning me? Clara took a breath, trying to steady herself. I'm not questioning you. I'm just saying that maybe a little flexibility wouldn't hurt. Flexibility? Sam laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to know what flexibility gets you out here, dead cattle? Broken fences, children who don't know up from down. This ranch runs on schedules, on routines. That's what holds everything together. Your children need more than schedules, Mr. Garrett. The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Sam went still, his eyes narrowing. What did you say? They need someone to see them. Clara's voice was shaking now, but she couldn't stop. Emma's exhausted. Will's angry. Rosie has nightmares every single night. And you work yourself half to death and barely look at them. They need more than rules and routines. They need... Don't. Sam's voice was low, dangerous. Don't you dare tell me what my children need. Someone has to. Get out. Clara stared at him. What? Get out of my kitchen. His hands were clenched at his sides, his whole body rigid with barely controlled anger. Now! She went. Clara sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall, her heart still racing. She'd gone too far. She knew that. She'd only been here a week, and she'd told this man, this grieving, exhausted, broken man, that he wasn't taking care of his own children. Stupid. Stupid and cruel and unfair. But true. God help her, it was true. A soft knock at her door made her jump. Miss Clara. Rosie's voice, small and uncertain. Clara wiped her eyes and opened the door. The little girl stood in the hallway, her rabbit clutched to her chest, her blue eyes worried. Are you leaving? Clara's heart clenched. No, sweetheart, I'm not leaving. Pa was yelling. The last one left when Pa yelled. I'm not the last one. Clara knelt down so she was eye level with the child. I'm not going anywhere. Remember, I promised. Rosie studied her face for a long moment. Then she nodded solemnly and held out her rabbit. Bunny wants to sleep with you tonight, so you won't be scared. Clara's throat tightened. She took the worn stuffed animal, holding it carefully. Thank you, Rosie. That's very kind. Bunny makes everything better. Rosie reached up and patted Clara's cheek with her small hand. Even when Pa yells. Then she turned and padded back down the hallway, leaving Clara standing there with a stuffed rabbit in her hands and tears streaming down her face. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in bed holding Rosie's rabbit, staring at the ceiling, replaying the argument with Sam over and over in her head. She'd overstepped. She knew that. But she also knew she wasn't wrong. Those children were starving not for food, but for attention, for affection, for someone who saw them as more than just mouths to feed and chores to assign. And Sam was drowning. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, in the tension in his shoulders, in the way he looked at his children with a fierce, desperate love that seemed to cause him physical pain. He was doing his best. But his best wasn't enough, and he knew it. That was the worst part, she realized. He knew. Around midnight she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy ones this time. A man's. They stopped outside her door. Clara held her breath, waiting. For a knock, an apology, something. But nothing came. The footsteps moved away, fading into silence. She didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning Sam was gone before Clara came downstairs. Emma said he'd left for the far pastures checking on cattle and wouldn't be back until after dark. Avoiding her. Of course. Clara threw herself into work, scrubbing floors that didn't need scrubbing, washing clothes that were already clean. Anything to keep her hands busy and her mind quiet. Will watched her with something like curiosity. You're still here, he said at lunch. I told you I would be. Pa was real mad last night. I know. He don't get mad much. Will kicked at the table leg. Not since Mama died. He just gets quiet. Clara looked at him, really looked past the dirt and the defiance and the anger. "You miss him being mad," she said slowly. "Don't you?" Will's jaw tightened. "That's stupid." "Is it? He used to yell at me when I did bad things. Now he just looks at me like—" Will stopped, his voice cracking. "Like he don't even see me." Clara's heart broke. This angry, difficult child who put snakes in her room and burrs in her shoes, he just wanted his father to notice him. Even if noticing meant getting yelled at. "Your father sees you, Will." "No, he don't." "He does. He's just—" Clara searched for the right words. "He's carrying a lot. Sometimes when people carry too much, they can't hold anything else. Not even the things they love most." Will was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked up at her, his dark eyes uncertain. "Do you think he'll ever put it down?" "I don't know." Clara reached out and squeezed his shoulder. "But I think he's trying." Something shifted in Will's expression. Not trust exactly, but the beginning of something that might become trust given time. "I'm sorry about the snake," he muttered. "I know. And the burrs. I know that too." He kicked at the table leg again, not meeting her eyes. "I didn't really want you to leave." "I know, Will." He looked up at her then, and for just a moment he looked like what he was, a scared 8-year-old boy who missed his mother and didn't know how to say it. "You ain't so bad," he said. "For a Boston lady." Clara smiled. "Thank you. You're not so bad yourself. For a boy who put snakes in people's rooms." He almost smiled back. Almost. It was progress. Sam came home after dark, exhausted and covered in dust. Clara heard him come in, heard him talking quietly to Emma in the kitchen. She stayed in her room, giving him space. But later, when the house had gone quiet and everyone else was asleep, she heard a knock at her door. Sam stood in the hallway, hat in his hands, his expression uncertain. "Can we talk?" Clara stepped back, letting him in. He stood awkwardly in the middle of her small room, turning his hat in his hands. "I owe you an apology," he said. "No, I do." He looked up at her, and she saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the grief that never seemed to fade. "You were right, about the children, about me. I know I ain't." He stopped, shaking his head. "I know I ain't been the father they need." "You're doing your best." "My best ain't good enough." His voice cracked. "Catherine, she was the one who knew how to love them right, how to hold them and talk to them and make them feel safe. I work. That's all I know how to do." Clara took a step closer. "That's not true." "It is, Sam." She waited until he looked at her. "I've been here a week. In that time, I've watched you carry Rosie to bed when she falls asleep at the table. I've watched you check on Will 3 times a night, even though you think nobody notices. I've watched you save Emma the best pieces of meat at every meal." Sam's jaw tightened. "That don't mean—" "It means everything." Clara's voice was firm. "You love them. They know you love them. You've forgotten how to show it in ways they can understand." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the floor. "Catherine used to say I was like a horse," he said finally. "Good heart but no words. She did all the talking for both of us." "You have words. You just need to use them." He looked up at her then, and something passed between them, a current of understanding, of shared pain, of two people who had both lost so much and were trying so hard to keep going. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly. "Any of it. I wake up every morning and I don't know how I'm going to make it through the day." "Neither do I." Clara's voice was soft. "But we do it anyway. That's all anyone can do." Sam studied her face for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "You're something else, Miss Sullivan." "Clara." She met his eyes. "Call me Clara." "Clara." He said her name like he was testing the weight of it. "I'm glad you're here, even when I'm too stubborn to show it." "I'm glad I'm here too." He nodded again, then turned toward the door. He paused with his hand on the frame. "Thank you," he said, "for not leaving. I made a promise." "I know." He looked back at her and something flickered in his eyes. Something warm. Something that made her breath catch. "That's why I'm thanking you." He was gone before she could respond. Clara sat down on the edge of her bed, her heart racing. Something had changed between them tonight. She didn't know what it meant, didn't know where it would lead. But for the first time since she'd arrived at this ranch, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next morning, Clara woke to the sound of voices in the kitchen. She dressed quickly and went downstairs. Emma was at the stove. Will was at the table, and Sam. Sam was sitting with Rosie in his lap, listening to her chatter about her rabbit, his big hand smoothing her dark curls. He looked up when Clara came in. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, maybe. Understanding. "Morning," he said. "Good morning." "Emma's making breakfast. Sit down." Clara sat. Rosie immediately climbed down from Sam's lap and scrambled into the chair next to her. "Miss Clara Pa said you're staying." "That's right. Forever." Clara looked at Sam. He was watching her, his expression unreadable. "As long as you'll have me," she said quietly. Rosie beamed. "I want you forever." "Rosie," Emma's voice was sharp, "don't be silly." "I ain't being silly. I like Miss Clara." "It's I'm not I ain't." "That's what I said." Will snorted into his milk. Even Sam's lips twitched. And Clara felt something warm bloom in her chest. Something that felt like hope. It wouldn't last. She knew that. There would be more tests, more trials, more moments when everything felt impossible. But right now, in this kitchen, with this family that wasn't quite hers, but might someday be right now, everything felt possible. She didn't know that by the end of the week, the whole valley would be talking about her. She didn't know that Cornelius Blake had already started asking questions that would bring nothing but trouble. She didn't know that the hardest tests were still to come. But in that moment, sitting at the breakfast table with Rosie's small hand in hers and Sam's eyes meeting hers across the room, in that moment, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. The trouble started on a Sunday. Sam decided they would all go to church. It was the first time in months, he said, and the children needed to be seen in town. People were talking, and silence only made the talk worse. Clara knew what he wasn't saying. People were talking about her. "You don't have to come," Sam said that morning, his voice careful. "If you'd rather stay, I'm coming." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right then." The wagon ride into Copper Creek felt longer than it should have. Emma sat rigid beside Clara, her jaw tight. Will fidgeted constantly, kicking at the wagon bed. Only Rosie seemed unaffected, chattering happily about the flowers she could see along the road. Clara's hands were folded in her lap, but inside her stomach churned. She knew what waited for them in town. She'd faced it before in Boston. The whispers, the stares, the judgment dressed up as concern. She'd survived it once. She could survive it again. The church was already filling when they arrived. Sam helped the children down from the wagon, then offered his hand to Clara. She took it, feeling the rough calluses against her palm, and stepped down onto the dusty street. People turned to look. Clara kept her chin up, her expression neutral. She walked beside Sam Rosie's hand in hers, feeling the weight of every stare like a physical thing pressing against her skin. "There she is," someone whispered. "The Boston woman. Living right there in his house. Shameless. Poor Catherine must be turning in her grave." Clara's step faltered. Sam's hand touched the small of her back, brief, barely there but steadying. "Keep walking," he murmured. "Don't give them the satisfaction." They found seats near the back. Emma slid in first, then Will, then Rosie, then Clara. Sam sat on the end, his body a barrier between his family and the rest of the congregation. The service passed in a blur. Clara heard none of it. She was too aware of the eyes on her, the whispers that rippled through the pews whenever she moved. When it was finally over, she stood to leave and found her path blocked. Nettie Blake stood in the aisle, her silk dress rustling, her face arranged in an expression of false concern. Behind her, two other women hovered like shadows. "Miss Sullivan, isn't it?" Clara's spine stiffened. "Yes. I'm Nettie Blake. My husband Cornelius owns the Blake Ranch." She paused, letting the name settle. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced." "No, ma'am, we haven't." Nettie's eyes swept over Clara, taking in her faded dress, her work-roughened hands. "I must say you're not quite what we expected. When we heard Sam had brought in help, we assumed well." She laughed lightly. "We assumed someone older, more experienced." "I'm experienced enough." "Are you?" Nettie's smile sharpened. "I've heard some interesting stories about your experience, Miss Sullivan, all the way from Boston." Clara's blood went cold. "I don't know what you've heard." "Oh, just whispers. Something about a young man from a good family, some sort of scandal." Nettie tilted her head, her voice carrying just far enough for the people nearby to hear. "It must have been terrible for you, being let go like that, having to travel all the way out here just to find work." The silence around them was deafening. Clara could feel everyone watching, waiting to see what she would do. "Nettie." Sam's voice cut through the tension. He stepped forward, his jaw tight. "That's enough." "I'm just making conversation, Sam." "No, you're making trouble." He moved to stand beside Clara, his shoulder nearly touching hers. "Whatever you've heard, it ain't your business, and I'd appreciate it if you kept your opinions to yourself." Nettie's eyes narrowed. "I'm only thinking of the children, Sam. They've been through so much. They deserve to be left alone." Sam's voice was hard. "We all do." He took Clara's elbow and guided her toward the door, the children following close behind. Clara didn't look back, but she could feel Nettie's gaze burning into her spine. Outside, she pulled away from Sam and walked quickly toward the wagon. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. "Clara." "I'm fine." "You're not fine." "I said I'm fine." Her voice cracked on the last word, betraying her. Sam caught up to her, stepping around to block her path. "Hey, look at me." She didn't want to. She didn't want him to see her like this, weak, humiliated, broken. But she looked. His face was grim, but his eyes were soft, concerned. "She's a mean woman, with nothing better to do than make other people miserable," he said quietly. "Her words don't mean anything. They do to everyone else. Then everyone else is wrong." He held her gaze. "I know who you are, Clara. I know what kind of person you are. That's what matters." Clara stared at him, her heart pounding. "Why? Why what? Why do you believe me? You don't even know me, not really." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and touched her cheek just briefly, just the tips of his fingers against her skin. "I know enough," he said. Before she could respond, Rosie's voice broke through. "Miss Clara, why are you crying?" Clara wiped her eyes quickly and turned. The three children stood by the wagon watching her with varying expressions. Rosie's concern, Will's confusion, and Emma's face was unreadable. But something had shifted in her eyes, something that looked almost like understanding. "I'm not crying, sweetheart," Clara said, forcing a smile. "Just some dust in my eyes." "The dust out here is terrible," Emma said quietly. "Makes everyone's eyes water sometimes." It was the closest thing to kindness Emma had ever offered her. Clara's throat tightened. "Yes," she managed. "It does." The ride home was silent, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Heavier, more complicated. When they reached the ranch, Clara went straight to her room. She needed a moment alone, needed to breathe, needed to. A soft knock at her door. "Come in." Emma stood in the doorway. Her thin shoulders squared her expression uncertain. "I brought you some water," she said, holding out a cup. "You looked thirsty." Clara took the cup, her hands still trembling slightly. "Thank you, Emma." The girl nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. "That lady was wrong," she said, not looking at Clara. "Whatever she said about you, she was wrong." Clara's breath caught. "How do you know?" "Because I've been watching you." Emma finally met her eyes. "You're not a bad person. You're just someone who got hurt. Like us." Then she was gone, her footsteps fading down the hallway. Clara sat down on the bed, the cup of water clutched in her hands, and let the tears finally fall. The week that followed was tense. Clara could feel something building in the house, something dark and heavy that pressed against the walls. Sam worked longer hours than ever, coming home exhausted and barely speaking. Emma moved through her chores with mechanical precision. Will's pranks stopped entirely, which somehow felt worse than the pranks themselves. And Rosie had started having nightmares again. Every night, Clara woke to the sound of crying padding down the hall to hold the little girl until she fell back asleep. "Is Pa mad?" Rosie asked one night, her voice muffled against Clara's shoulder. "No, sweetheart. He's just worried about things." "What things?" Clara stroked her dark curls. "Grown-up things. Nothing you need to worry about." "Is he mad at you?" The question hit Clara like a punch. "Why would you think that?" "Because he don't look at you no more. Not like he used to." Clara's heart clenched. She'd noticed it too, the way Sam avoided her eyes, the way he left rooms when she entered them. Something had changed since Sunday, since he'd defended her in front of the whole town. Maybe he regretted it. Maybe he'd realized the cost of standing up for her was too high. "Your pa has a lot on his mind," Clara said carefully. "It doesn't mean he's mad at anyone." Rosie was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up, her blue eyes serious. "I don't want you to go away, Miss Clara." "I'm not going anywhere. Promise." Clara kissed her forehead. "Promise." But as she walked back to her own room, she wondered if it was a promise she could keep. The next morning, Clara overheard something she wasn't meant to hear. She was coming down the stairs when she heard voices in the kitchen. Sam's low rumble, and another voice, one she didn't recognize. She stopped on the stairs, holding her breath. "Can't keep going like this, Sam. You're barely keeping your head above water." "I'm managing." "You call this managing? Look at this place. Look at yourself. You need help." "I have help." A pause. "You mean the woman?" "Her name's Clara." "I know what her name is. The whole valley knows what her name is." The other voice, male, older, sighed heavily. "Look, I ain't here to tell you how to live your life. But Cornelius Blake has been asking questions. He knows you're behind on payments. He knows you lost cattle last month. And now he knows you've got a woman living here who came from God knows where with a reputation that's already getting people talking." Clara's stomach dropped. "What's your point?" Sam's voice was tight. "My point is that Blake's circling. He wants your land, Sam. He's wanted it for years. And if you give him any excuse, any reason to make trouble, he'll use it. He can try. He will try. That's what I'm telling you." A scrape of a chair. "Send her away, before it's too late." Silence stretched. Clara pressed herself against the wall, her heart pounding so hard she was sure they could hear it. "I ain't sending her away," Sam said finally. "She's done nothing wrong. It don't matter what she's done. It matters what people think she's done. Then people can go to hell." More silence. Then the other voice, softer now. "You care about her, don't you?" Sam didn't answer. "Sam, don't do this to yourself. Don't do this to your kids. Catherine's only been gone 3 years. Don't." Sam's voice was sharp enough to cut. "Don't you dare bring Catherine into this." I'm just saying. I know what you're saying, and I'm telling you to leave. Footsteps. The kitchen door opened and closed. Clara heard boots on the porch, the creak of a horse's saddle, the fading sound of hooves. She stayed frozen on the stairs, barely breathing. Send her away, before it's too late. And Sam. Sam had refused. But for how long? How long before the pressure became too much? How long before he realized that keeping her here was costing him everything? She crept back up the stairs before Sam could catch her eavesdropping. Her hands were shaking as she closed her bedroom door. She needed to think. She needed to decide. Maybe she should leave. Maybe it would be better for everyone if she just disappeared before things got worse. But then she thought of Rosie's arms around her neck, of Will's almost smile, of Emma bringing her water after the church incident. She thought of Sam's fingers on her cheek, his voice rough with sincerity. I know enough. She couldn't leave. Not yet. Not unless he asked her to. The day everything changed started like any other. Clara was in the kitchen helping Emma prepare lunch when she realized Will was missing. Has anyone seen your brother? She asked. Emma looked up, frowning. He was in the barn an hour ago. He's not there now, I checked. Maybe he went down to the creek. Clara's stomach tightened. Will had been quiet all week, too quiet. No pranks, no mischief, no smart remarks. She'd thought he was finally settling down. Now she wondered if something else was going on. I'm going to go look for him, she said. She searched the barn, the chicken coop, the well, the fence line. No sign of Will. No sign of Dusty either, the scruffy dog that followed him everywhere. Her heart began to pound. Sam. She found him in the far pasture, checking on a sick calf. He looked up as she ran toward him, his face going tight with concern. What is it? Will's gone. I can't find him anywhere. Sam dropped the rope he was holding and was moving before she finished speaking. How long? I don't know. Maybe an hour, maybe more. Emma said he was in the barn. Damn it! Sam whistled sharply and his horse trotted over. I'll check the north pasture. You go back to the house, see if he came home. Sam, wait. Clara grabbed his arm. What if something happened? What if he's hurt? Sam's jaw was tight, but his eyes were calm, determined. We'll find him. Go. Clara ran back to the house. Emma met her at the door, her face pale. Did you find him? Not yet. Your father's looking. Clara took Emma's hands. Think. Did Will say anything today? Anything strange? Emma's eyes filled with tears. I don't know. Emma, focus. This is important. The girl's chin trembled. Last night, she whispered. Last night I heard Pa talking to Miguel about the ranch, about maybe having to sell some land. And then he said something about sending someone to town to find work. Clara's blood went cold. Sending who? I don't know. But Will was outside the window. I saw him run off. Emma's voice cracked. I should have said something. I should have. It's not your fault. Clara squeezed her hands. Stay here with Rosie. I'm going to find him. She ran to the barn, saddled the oldest, gentlest horse, the only one she trusted herself to ride, and headed out. She knew somehow where he would go. Martha had mentioned it once, the little cemetery on the hill where Catherine was buried, where Will went sometimes when he thought no one was watching. Clara pushed the horse harder than she should have, her heart pounding with every stride. If anything had happened to that boy, that angry, difficult, scared little boy. She couldn't finish the thought. The cemetery came into view, and she saw him immediately. A small figure sitting beside a weathered wooden marker, his dog curled up at his feet. Clara dismounted and approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. Will, he didn't look up. Go away. I can't do that. I said go away. She sat down in the grass beside him, close enough to reach out and touch him, but she didn't. You scared everyone, she said quietly. Good. No, not good. She waited until he looked at her. His eyes were red, his cheeks streaked with dried tears. What happened? Nothing. Will! His face crumpled. Pa's gonna send me away. Clara's heart broke. What? I heard him. Last night. He was talking to Miguel about sending someone to town. And I know it's me. I know it's because I'm too much trouble. His voice cracked. The last lady said so. She said I was more trouble than I was worth. Oh, Will. Clara reached out and pulled him into her arms. He resisted for a moment, then collapsed against her, sobbing. I don't want to go, he cried. I'll be good. I promise I'll be good. I won't put snakes in nobody's room no more. I won't run off. I'll do whatever Pa says. Will listen to me. Clara held him tighter. Your father is not sending you away. He would never send you away. But I heard. You heard wrong. She pulled back, tilting his chin up so he had to look at her. The person your father was talking about sending to town. It was probably Miguel to get supplies, or maybe one of the other ranch hands. It was not you. How do you know? Because your father loves you more than anything in this world. Clara's voice was fierce. I've seen the way he looks at you. I've seen the way he checks on you 3 times every night, even when he thinks nobody's watching. You could put 100 snakes in my room, and he still wouldn't send you away. Will stared at her, hope and fear warring on his young face. Really? Really? Clara wiped his tears with her thumb. You're not too much trouble, Will. You're a boy who misses his mother and doesn't know how to say it. That's not trouble. That's just being human. Will's lower lip trembled. I do miss her. I miss her so much. I know. I don't remember what she smelled like no more. I try and I can't remember. Fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. Emma remembers everything, but I can't remember nothing. Clara held him close, letting him cry against her shoulder. Her own eyes were burning, but she blinked the tears back. It's okay to not remember, she whispered. It doesn't mean you loved her any less. Pa never talks about her. He gets all quiet and goes away. Your father carries his grief differently. But it doesn't mean he's forgotten her. It just means it hurts too much to talk about. Will was quiet for a long moment, his small body shuddering with suppressed sobs. Then he pulled back and looked at her with eyes that seemed older than 8. Miss Clara. Yes. I'm glad you came here, even though I put a snake in your room. Despite everything, Clara smiled. I'm glad I came here too, snake and all. The sound of hooves made them both turn. Sam came riding over the hill, his face tight with fear, and then relief so profound it transformed his features entirely. He was off his horse before it stopped moving, crossing the distance in 3 long strides, and dropping to his knees beside Will. Pa, Will started. Sam pulled him into his arms, holding him so tight, Clara thought he might never let go. Don't you ever do that again, Sam said, his voice rough. You hear me? Don't you ever. I'm sorry, Pa. I thought... Sam's voice broke. I thought something happened to you. I thought you were going to send me away. Sam pulled back his hands on Will's shoulders. What? I heard you talking to Miguel about sending someone to town. Will. Sam's face crumpled. That was about Miguel's brother. He needs work and I was helping him find a position. It had nothing to do with you. But the lady said... What lady? What did she say? Will looked down. The one before Miss Clara. She said I was too much trouble. She said you'd be better off without me. Sam went very still. When he spoke, his voice was low and dangerous. She said that to you. Will nodded, not meeting his eyes. Sam cupped his son's face in his hands, forcing Will to look at him. Listen to me, he said. Listen good. You are my son, my blood. Nothing in this world, nothing could ever make me send you away. Do you understand? Yes, sir. I love you, Will. Even when you put snakes in people's rooms. Even when you drive me crazy. even when I don't know how to show it. Sam's voice cracked. I love you, and I'm sorry I haven't said it enough. Will's face crumpled, and he threw his arms around his father's neck. I love you too, Pa. Clara stood quietly watching them, her own tears finally falling. This moment wasn't hers. It belonged to them, father and son, healing a wound that had been festering for years. But then Sam looked up at her over Will's shoulder. Thank you, he said quietly, for finding him. I knew where to look. Sam's eyes held hers. You always seemed to know. They rode back to the ranch together, Will sitting in front of his father, Clara following behind. The sun was setting by the time they arrived, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. Emma ran out to meet them, her face streaked with tears. She threw her arms around Will the moment he dismounted. Don't ever do that again, she yelled. I was so scared. I'm sorry. You should be. But she was hugging him tight, even as she scolded him. Stupid, 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 stupid. Rosie came toddling out after her, clutching her rabbit. She looked up at Will with solemn eyes. Did you run away? Kind of. Are you going to do it again? Will looked at his father, then at Clara. No, he said. I ain't going anywhere. That night, after the children were in bed, Sam found Clara on the porch. She was sitting on the steps, watching the stars come out. He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Hell of a day, he said. That's one word for it. Silence stretched between them, but it was comfortable now. Easy. I didn't know, Sam said finally, about what that woman said to Will. I would never have. I know. He's my son, my difficult, stubborn, wonderful son. The thought that he's been carrying that around all this time. Children hear things. They make connections that aren't there. It's not your fault. Sam rubbed his face with both hands. It is, though. I should have talked to him more. Should have told him I loved him more. Should have. You're doing it now. That's what matters. He looked at her, his expression raw and open in a way she'd never seen before. You're something else, Clara Sullivan. So you've said. I mean it. He reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough, calloused, warm. I don't know what we would have done without you. You would have managed. No. His grip tightened. We wouldn't. Clara looked at their joined hands, feeling her heart pound against her ribs. This was dangerous. This was exactly what everyone in town was whispering about. She didn't care. Sam, I know. His voice was quiet. I know this is complicated. I know people are talking. I know I've got no right to feel what I'm feeling. What are you feeling? He was silent for a long moment. Then he lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss against her knuckles. Grateful, he said. Hopeful. Terrified. Terrified of what? His eyes met hers. Of losing you. The way I lost her. Clara's breath caught. Sam, I ain't asking for anything. I ain't expecting anything. I just... He stopped shaking his head. I needed you to know, whatever happens. I needed you to know that you matter. To me. To all of us. Clara squeezed his hand. Her eyes burning with tears she refused to shed. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered. Promise. She thought of Rosie asking her the same question, of Will sobbing in her arms, of Emma offering her water after the church incident. Promise. Sam nodded slowly. Then he released her hand and stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be another long day. Aren't they all? He almost smiled. Yeah, they are. He went inside, and Clara sat alone on the porch, watching the stars wheel overhead. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if the whispers would get worse, if Cornelius Blake would make trouble, if everything would fall apart. But right now, in this moment, She felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She felt like she belonged. The smell woke Clara before the shouting did. Smoke. Thick and acrid, burning her throat before she even opened her eyes. She was out of bed and running before her mind caught up with her body. The hallway was hazy, and she could hear Sam's voice outside, sharp with urgency. "Miguel, get the horses now!" Clara burst onto the porch, and her heart stopped. The eastern pasture was burning. Flames crawled across the dry grass like living things, devouring everything in their path. The summer drought had turned the valley into kindling, and now it was paying the price. "Clara." Sam's voice cut through her shock. "Get the children." She ran back inside, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Emma was already awake, pulling Rosie from her bed. "I've got them," Emma said, her voice steady despite her pale face. "Will's getting dusty." "Bring them to the well. Stay there. Don't move." Clara ran back outside. Sam and Miguel were already working, beating at the flames with wet blankets, trying to create a fire break between the blaze and the barn. She grabbed a blanket, dunked it in the water trough, and joined them. The heat was unbearable. Clara's arms ached within minutes, her lungs burning from the smoke. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. "It's spreading too fast," Miguel shouted. "We can't hold it. We have to try." Sam's face was streaked with soot, his eyes wild. "Everything we have is in that barn." Clara looked at the flames, then at the barn, then at Sam. She made a decision. "The hay," she said. "We need to move the hay. There's no time. If the barn catches, we lose everything. The hay is dry. It'll go up like paper." She grabbed his arm. "Sam, we have to try." Something shifted in his eyes. Trust, maybe, or desperation. "Miguel, keep working the fire break. Clara with me." They ran to the barn. The heat was worse inside, the air thick with smoke, and the panicked sounds of horses. Sam threw open the stalls, letting the animals flee into the yard. "Help me with this." He grabbed one end of a hay bale. Clara grabbed the other. They worked in desperate silence, hauling bales out of the barn and away from the approaching flames. Clara's hands were raw within minutes, her muscles screaming, but she didn't slow down. "That's the last of it," Sam gasped. Clara turned to look at the fire. It had reached the edge of the yard, now licking at the fence posts. But the fire break was holding. Barely. "It's slowing down," she said. Sam didn't respond. He was staring at the flames with an expression she couldn't read. "Sam, she's still there." Clara's blood went cold. "What? Catherine?" His voice was hollow. "I buried her in the east pasture, under the old oak tree. The flames were consuming the eastern pasture, the place where his wife was buried." "Sam, I know." His jaw tightened. "I know there's nothing I can do. I know she's already gone. But watching it burn..." His voice cracked. "It feels like losing her all over again." Clara reached out and took his hand. His fingers were rough, blistered from the fire, but they closed around hers like she was the only solid thing in the world. "She's not there," Clara said quietly. "Not really. She's with your children. She's in Emma's determination and Will's stubbornness and Rosie's laugh. The fire can't touch that." Sam looked at her, his eyes wet with more than just smoke. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Say exactly what I need to hear." Before Clara could answer, Will's voice rang out across the yard. "Papa, come quick." They ran. Will was standing by the well, pointing toward the road. A wagon was approaching, and even from a distance Clara recognized the driver, Cornelius Blake. Sam's expression hardened. "Get the children inside." "Sam." "Now, Clara." She gathered the children and herded them toward the house, but she stopped on the porch watching as Blake's wagon rolled to a stop. "Garrett." Blake climbed down his expensive suit, somehow still immaculate despite the smoke filling the air. "Looks like you've had some trouble." Fire started in the east pasture. We've got it under control. Do you? Blake's eyes swept over the charred landscape, the exhausted workers, the battered ranch. Doesn't look like control to me. What do you want, Cornelius? Just being neighborly. Blake smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I heard you've been having a hard time lately. Drought's been tough on everyone. And now this fire? He shook his head. That's a lot of bad luck for one man. Sam's hands clenched at his sides. Get to the point. I'm a businessman, Garrett. I see an opportunity, I take it. Blake reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. I'm prepared to make you an offer. Fair price for your land. Enough to start over somewhere else. This is my home. This is a pile of debts and dying cattle. Blake's voice sharpened. Wake up, Sam. You're drowning. I'm offering you a lifeline. And if I don't take it? Blake's smile turned cold. Then I wait. Sooner or later, the bank's going to come calling. And when they do, I'll be there with a much lower offer. He tucked the paper back into his coat. Think about it. Think about those children of yours. What's best for them? He tipped his hat and climbed back into his wagon. Oh, and Garrett. He looked back over his shoulder. You might want to reconsider your household arrangements. People are talking. It's not good for business. His eyes flicked to Clara on the porch. Or for reputations. The wagon rolled away. Sam stood frozen, his shoulders rigid with barely contained rage. Clara walked down from the porch. Sam, don't. His voice was rough. Just don't. He walked away toward the burned pasture, toward the place where his wife was buried. Clara let him go. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the fire, about how fast it had spread, how perfectly positioned it had been, about Cornelius Blake showing up with an offer before the smoke had even cleared. Something wasn't right. She found Miguel in the barn tending to the horses. The fire, she said without preamble. Where did it start? Miguel looked up, his dark eyes wary. The east pasture, near the fence line. How? Lightning, maybe. Dry grass. Could have been anything. But you don't think so? Miguel was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. I found something. When we were fighting the flames. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal object. Lucifer match. Still had the sulfur smell on it. Clara's blood ran cold. Someone set it deliberately. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. Miguel pocketed the match. I haven't told the boss yet. He's got enough to worry about. You have to tell him. And say what? That someone tried to burn his ranch. That someone wants him gone. Miguel shook his head. He already knows, Miss Clara. He's known since Blake showed up this morning. Clara thought of Sam walking alone toward his wife's grave. The weight on his shoulders, the grief in his eyes. What's he going to do? What can he do? Miguel's voice was heavy. Fight. That's all any of us can do. Clara found Sam in the barn the next morning. He was sitting on a hay bale, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. For a moment, Clara thought he was crying. Then she realized it was something worse. He was laughing. Sam! He looked up. His eyes were red, his face haggard, but there was something wild in his expression. Do you know what today is? Tuesday. It's 3 years. His voice cracked on the words. 3 years since Catherine died. I was going to take flowers to her grave. He laughed again, hollow and broken. Can't even do that now. Fire took everything. Clara sat down beside him. She didn't touch him, didn't speak, just sat. I killed her, Sam said. What? She went into labor with Rosie. It was hard, harder than the others. I knew something was wrong. I knew I should take her to town to the doctor, but she said she was fine, said she'd done this before. His voice dropped to a whisper. I believed her. Clara's heart clenched. Sam? By the time I realized how bad it was too late. She bled too much. There was nothing anyone could do. He looked at Clara, his eyes raw with old pain. I held her while she died. She made me promise to take care of the children, made me promise to keep going. His jaw tightened. Some days I don't know how. Clara reached out and took his hand. He flinched, but didn't pull away. You didn't kill her, she said quietly. You loved her. You trusted her. That's not the same thing. I should have known. Should have known what that something would go wrong. That the woman you loved was hiding how much pain she was in because she didn't want you to worry. Clara squeezed his hand. You couldn't have saved her, Sam. Sometimes people die and there's nothing we can do. It's not fair and it's not right, but it's the truth. Sam stared at her, something shifting in his eyes. You sound like you know. I do. Clara's throat tightened. My brother drowned when he was 10. I was supposed to be watching him. I looked away for one moment, and when I looked back, she couldn't finish. Clara, I spent years blaming myself, years believing I'd killed him. But I didn't. I was just a child who made a mistake. She met his eyes. And you were just a husband who trusted his wife. That's not murder. That's love. Sam was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss against her knuckles. You're too good for this place, he murmured. Too good for me. That's not true. It is. He looked at her, and there was something new in his eyes. Something that made her heart pound. But I'm too selfish to let you go. Before she could respond, shouting erupted from the yard. Boss, boss, come quick. They ran outside. Miguel was standing by the fence, his face grim. Beside him stood a man Clara didn't recognize, thin, nervous, holding his hat in his hands. What is it? Sam demanded. This man says he works for Blake, Miguel said. Says he has something to tell you. Sam's expression hardened. Talk. The thin man swallowed hard. Mr. Blake, he didn't send me. I came on my own. What he's doing, it ain't right. What's he doing? The fire. The man's voice dropped. He paid someone to start it. Said he needed to soften you up. Make you desperate enough to sell. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Sam. His expression hadn't changed, but his hands had curled into fists at his sides. You have proof. I heard him talking to his foreman. Day before the fire. He said... The man hesitated. He said if a little smoke didn't do the trick, there were other ways to make a man see reason. What other ways? The man looked at Clara. His eyes were full of fear. He said something about the woman. About making sure she couldn't stay. Sam moved so fast, Clara barely saw it. He grabbed the man by his collar and slammed him against the fence. What did he say about her? Exactly. I don't know. I swear. He just said he said a scandal would take care of everything. That no decent woman could stay after people started talking. Sam's jaw tightened. He released the man with a shove. Get out of here, before I change my mind about letting you go. The man scrambled away, practically running toward the road. Miguel looked at Sam. What do you want to do, boss? Sam didn't answer. He was staring into the distance, his face carved from stone. Sam. Clara touched his arm. What are you going to do? When he looked at her, his eyes were hard, determined. I'm going to end this. He rode out that afternoon. Clara watched him go, her heart in her throat. Where's Pa going? Will asked, coming to stand beside her. To take care of something. Is he coming back? Clara pulled the boy close. Always. But as she watched Sam disappear over the ridge, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The hours crawled by. Clara kept the children busy, helping Emma with mending playing games with Rosie, letting Will help Miguel with the evening chores. But her eyes kept drifting to the road, waiting for Sam to return. The sun set. The stars came out. Still no Sam. Miss Clara. Rosie tugged at her sleeve. I'm sleepy. I know, sweetheart. Let's get you to bed. Clara carried the little girl upstairs, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. Will and Emma were already in their rooms, the house quiet except for the creak of settling wood. She was about to go back downstairs when she heard it. Hooves on the road, moving fast. Clara ran to the window. A single rider was approaching. Sam. She met him at the door. His face was grim, his clothes dusty, but there was something different in his eyes, something lighter. What happened? It's done. He stepped inside, pulling off his hat. Blake won't be bothering us anymore. What did you do? Had a conversation. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Turns out Blake's foreman was willing to talk. For the right price. Now I've got enough proof to take to the sheriff. Will that be enough? It'll be enough to keep him busy for a while. Long enough for me to figure out the rest. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands. Long enough for me to do this. He kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative questioning. But when Clara's hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer, something broke loose between them. He kissed her like a drowning man finding air. Like a man who'd been alone in the dark for 3 years and had finally found the light. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. I shouldn't have done that, Sam said roughly. I should have asked. I should have... Sam. What? Clara smiled. Shut up and kiss me again. He did. Later, much later, they stood on the porch together watching the stars. People will talk, Sam said quietly. More than they already do. I know. It won't be easy. Blake might still cause trouble. The town might never accept you. I know. He turned to look at her. Then why are you smiling? Clara reached up and touched his face, this weathered, weary, beautiful face. Because for the first time in my life, she said, I know exactly where I belong. Sam pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, like he never intended to let go. Welcome home, he whispered against her hair. Welcome home. The news spread through Copper Creek like wildfire. Cornelius Blake had been arrested. The sheriff had come for him at dawn with papers and witnesses and enough evidence to make even the most skeptical townspeople believe. Arson, attempted fraud, conspiracy to destroy a man's livelihood. The valley buzzed with gossip for days, but Clara barely noticed. She was too busy waiting for the other shoe to drop, because even with Blake gone, the whispers hadn't stopped. If anything, they'd gotten worse. Now people weren't just talking about the Boston woman living with the widower. They were talking about how she'd stayed through the fire, how she'd fought alongside him, how Sam Garrett had kissed her on his front porch, where anyone riding by could see. You should have been more careful, Martha said, arriving at the ranch 3 days after Blake's arrest. Her voice was sharp, but her eyes were worried. Half the town saw you two last night. Clara's stomach dropped. What? The Hendersons were riding past, saw everything. Martha crossed her arms. By morning it was all over the valley. Clara closed her eyes, shame and defiance warring in her chest. It was one kiss. One kiss is enough. Martha's voice softened slightly. I'm not saying you did wrong. I'm saying others will think you did, and they'll make you pay for it. Let them. Easy to say, harder to live. Martha glanced toward the house. Have you talked to Sam about this? Not yet. You need to, before someone else does. Clara found Sam in the barn mending a harness. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered across his face. Warmth quickly suppressed. Martha's here, Clara said. I know, saw her wagon. She says people are talking, about us, about the kiss. Sam's hands stilled on the leather. I figured they would. And... He set down the harness and stood facing her. His expression was unreadable. What do you want me to say, Clara? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I don't know what any of this means. I don't know what you want. I don't know. I want you. The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Sam, I want you to stay. I want to wake up every morning knowing you're here. I want my children to grow up with you in their lives. He took a step closer. But I can't ask you to do that. Not when it means giving up everything else. What am I giving up? I have nothing. You have your reputation. What's left of it? His voice was bitter. If you stay here unmarried after what people saw, you'll never be able to go anywhere else. You'll be trapped. Maybe I don't want to go anywhere else. Sam's jaw tightened. You don't know that. You've only been here a few weeks. Once the shine wears off, once you see what this life really is. I've seen it. Clara stepped closer, close enough to touch him. I've seen the exhaustion, and the grief, and the endless work. I've seen you fall apart and put yourself back together. I've seen your children hurt and heal. Her voice softened. And I've seen you, Sam, the real you, the one you try so hard to hide. Clara, I'm not leaving, unless you tell me to go. Sam stared at her, something breaking open behind his eyes. I can't tell you to go. God help me, I've tried. I've told myself 100 times that it would be better for everyone if you just... He stopped, shaking his head. But I can't. I can't let you go. Then don't. He reached for her, pulling her close, his arms wrapping around her like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. This is going to be hard, he murmured against her hair. I know. People won't accept it. Not easily. I know. You'll have to fight. Every day. For respect, for acceptance, for everything. Clara pulled back and looked up at him, her eyes steady. I've been fighting my whole life, Sam. At least now I have something worth fighting for. But the next morning, everything changed. Clara came downstairs to find Emma sitting at the kitchen table, a letter in her hands. The girl's face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. Emma? What's wrong? Emma looked up. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she held out the letter. It came this morning, from Aunt Ruth, Pa's sister in Denver. Clara took the letter, scanning it quickly. Her blood went cold. She wants to take you, all three of you. She says Pa can't take care of us properly, says it's not right us living here with... Emma's voice caught. With a woman of questionable character. Clara flinched like she'd been slapped. She says if Pa doesn't send us to Denver, she'll petition the court. Emma's chin trembled. She'll try to take us away. Clara's hands were shaking. She set the letter down carefully, trying to keep her voice steady. Does your father know? Not yet. He's in the north pasture. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Miss Clara, I don't want to go to Denver. I don't want to leave Pa. I don't want to leave. She stopped, her face crumpling. I don't want to leave you. Clara's heart broke. She knelt beside Emma's chair and took the girl's hands. Listen to me. No one is taking you anywhere. Do you understand? Your father won't let it happen. I won't let it happen. But if the court says, the court isn't going to say anything. Your father is a good man who loves his children. That's what matters. But Aunt Ruth said, I don't care what Aunt Ruth said. Clara's voice was fierce. You belong here, with your family, and I will do whatever it takes to make sure you stay. Emma stared at her, tears streaming down her face. Then she threw her arms around Clara's neck and held on like she was drowning. I'm sorry, Emma sobbed. I'm sorry I was so mean to you. I'm sorry I didn't want you here. I was scared and I missed Mama and I thought, shh. Clara stroked her hair, her own eyes burning. It's all right. I understand. I don't want you to go. Please don't go. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart, I promise. Sam's reaction was worse than Clara had feared. He read the letter in silence, his face going hard as stone. When he finished, he crumpled the paper in his fist and threw it into the fire. She has no right. Sam. Ruth has never cared about those children. She didn't come when Catherine died. She didn't offer to help. She just sat in her fancy Denver house and judged from afar. His voice shook with rage. And now she wants to take them because of gossip. She might have a case. Clara hated saying it, but it was true. If she goes to court, if she tells them what? That I have a woman helping me raise my children, that's not a crime. It's not about crime. It's about respectability. Clara's voice was quiet. An unmarried woman living in the same house as a widower. People will draw conclusions. A judge will draw conclusions. Sam's jaw tightened. Then let them. Sam, listen to me. If she takes this to court, if she brings witnesses, if she has Nettie Blake and all the others testifying about what they've seen and heard, you could lose them, all three of them. The color drained from Sam's face. No. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's possible. Clara took a breath. Unless what? She couldn't look at him. Unless I leave. No. Sam. I said no. He grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. You are not leaving. I am not losing you to save my reputation. This isn't about reputation. This is about your children. My children love you. Emma just spent an hour crying because she thought you might leave. Will hasn't pulled a single prank since the fire. And Rosie, his voice cracked. Rosie calls you Mama when she thinks no one can hear. Clara's heart stopped. What? She whispers it at night, when you're putting her to bed. Sam's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She thinks you don't know. Clara pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. You can't leave, Sam said. You can't. It would destroy them. It would destroy me. Then what do we do? Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough but determined. We stop running. We stop hiding. We show this valley exactly who we are and what we stand for. He took her hands in his. And we do it together. The plan came together quickly. Sunday. Church. The whole family sitting in the front pew where everyone could see them. Are you sure about this? Clara asked the night before, her stomach churning with nerves. No. Sam almost smiled. But I'm doing it anyway. The whole town will be watching. Good. Let them watch. Clara lay awake most of the night, running through every possible disaster. They would be mocked. They would be shunned. They would be driven out of the valley. But when she finally fell asleep, she dreamed of Catherine, a woman she'd never met who spoke to her in a voice like wind through grass. Take care of them. They need you. He needs you. I will, Clara promised. I will. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear. Clara dressed in her best dress, the one she'd been saving, the one that still looked almost new. Emma helped her with her hair, her small fingers surprisingly gentle. You look pretty, Miss Clara. Thank you, sweetheart. Are you scared? Terrified. Emma smiled just a little. Me too. But Pa says being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. Clara's throat tightened. Your father's a smart man. I know. Emma squeezed her hand. That's why he picked you. The ride into town felt like a funeral procession. Will sat rigid beside Sam, his young face set with determination. Emma held Rosie in her lap, the little girl clutching her rabbit with white-knuckled hands. And Clara sat straight-backed on the wagon seat, her heart pounding so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. The church was already filling when they arrived. People turned to stare as Sam helped Clara down from the wagon. Whispers rippled through the crowd like waves. He brought her. Shameless. Those poor children. Clara kept her chin up, her eyes forward. Sam's hand found the small of her back, steadying her. Ready, he murmured. No. Good. Neither am I. They walked into the church together. The silence was deafening. Every eye in the room followed them as they made their way down the center aisle. Clara could feel the judgment, the disapproval, the righteous indignation radiating from the pews. Sam didn't stop until he reached the front row. The row that had been Catherine's. The row that had sat empty for 3 years. He stepped aside to let Clara in first. For a moment she hesitated. This was Catherine's place, Catherine's seat. The wife who had died giving life to the child who now clung to Clara's skirt. Then she felt a small hand slip into hers. She looked down. Rosie was smiling up at her, her blue eyes bright with trust. "It's okay, Mama," she whispered. "I'll sit with you." Clara's heart shattered and rebuilt itself in the span of a single breath. She squeezed Rosie's hand and slid into the pew. The service began. Reverend Whitmore was a tall man with kind eyes and a voice that carried to every corner of the small church. He spoke of faith, of forgiveness, of the importance of community. Then he paused. "I want to talk today about something that's been weighing on my heart," he said. "Something that's been weighing on all our hearts, whether we admit it or not." Clara felt Sam tense beside her. "There's a story in the Bible," the Reverend continued, "about a woman caught in sin. The people wanted to stone her. They were so certain of her guilt, so eager to pass judgment. But Jesus said something that changed everything. He said, 'Let he who is without sin cast the first stone.'" A murmur rippled through the congregation. "We've been doing a lot of stone throwing lately," Reverend Whitmore said quietly. "We've been whispering and judging and deciding we know the truth about people we've never even spoken to. We've been so busy protecting our own righteousness that we've forgotten what it means to be truly righteous." His eyes swept over the congregation, landing briefly on Clara. Righteousness isn't about keeping yourself clean. It's about lifting others up. It's about seeing the best in people, even when they're at their worst. It's about welcoming the stranger, not driving them away. Behind Clara, someone shifted uncomfortably. "I've watched a family in our community struggle these past 3 years," the Reverend said. "A man who lost his wife, children who lost their mother. And I've watched how they've suffered, how they've tried to hold together when everything was falling apart." His voice softened. "And then I watched someone new come into their lives. Someone who came with nothing but her own courage and her willingness to help. I've watched her tend to those children, work alongside that man, become part of that family. And I've watched this community respond not with welcome, but with suspicion. Not with compassion, but with cruelty." Nettie Blake's voice cut through the silence. "Reverend, with all due respect, Mrs. Blake, I'm speaking." The church went silent. "I'm not saying we should ignore propriety," Reverend Whitmore continued. "I'm saying we should examine our own hearts before we condemn others. I'm saying that love, real love, the kind that sacrifices and serves and stays, is not something to be judged. It's something to be celebrated." Martha Jenkins stood up. Clara's heart stopped. "I've got something to say." "Martha," someone hissed. "No, let me speak." Martha's voice was firm. "I was one of the first to whisper about Miss Sullivan. I was suspicious. I was unkind. And I was wrong." She turned to face the congregation. "I've watched that young woman work harder than any hired hand I've ever seen. I've watched her love those children like they were her own. I've watched her face our judgment with more grace than any of us deserved." Martha's voice caught. "And I've watched her make that family whole again." She looked at Clara, her weathered face softening. "Miss Sullivan, I owe you an apology. We all do. You came here looking for a fresh start, and we made it as hard as we possibly could. That was wrong. And I'm sorry." Clara couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down her face, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. Another woman stood. Then another. Then an old man Clara had never spoken to, who cleared his throat and said, "I remember when Catherine died. Sam Garrett nearly worked himself to death trying to keep that ranch together. Seemed to me he deserved some help. Seemed to me his children deserved a mother." More voices joined in. Not everyone, Nettie Blake sat rigid in her pew, her face like stone, but enough. Enough to shift the weight of the room. Enough to change something. Reverend Whitmore smiled. "It seems the congregation has spoken," he said. "Now let's pray." After the service, people approached Clara and Sam with handshakes and awkward apologies. Some were genuine, others were motivated by guilt or the fear of being on the wrong side of public opinion. Clara accepted them all with equal grace, but it was Martha who pulled her aside, taking both of Clara's hands in her weathered grip. "I meant what I said," the older woman said quietly. "I was wrong about you. Catherine was my friend, and I thought—" She stopped, shaking her head. "I thought loving someone new meant forgetting someone old. But that's not how love works, is it?" "No," Clara said. "It isn't." Martha squeezed her hands. "Catherine would have liked you. She would have been glad." Her voice broke. "She would have been glad her family found you." She walked away before Clara could respond. Sam appeared at her side, his hand finding hers. "You all right?" "I don't know." Clara laughed a little wildly. "Is this real? Did that just happen?" "Seemed real to me." "I thought they would destroy us." "So did I." Sam pulled her close, right there in the churchyard where everyone could see. "But I think maybe we're harder to destroy than we thought." 2 weeks later, the summer began to fade. Clara stood on the porch watching the children play in the yard. Emma was reading under the old tree, reading of all things. The girl who had barely spoken to Clara was now devouring books as fast as Clara could find them. "Miss Clara, look—" Will came running up, Dusty at his heels, a string of fish dangling from his hand. "I caught 'em myself, all by myself." "Those are beautiful, Will." Clara admired the fish appropriately. "Your father will be so proud." "Think so?" "I know so." Will beamed. Actually beamed, this angry boy who had once put snakes in her room and ran off to show Emma. The door opened behind her. Sam came out, a cup of coffee in each hand. He handed one to Clara and settled beside her on the porch rail. "Rosie's napping," he said. "Finally wore herself out. She was up early this morning." "I know. She wanted to help with breakfast." Sam smiled. "Burnt the eggs." Was so proud of herself. Clara laughed. "She'll learn. She's got a good teacher." They sat in comfortable silence watching the children. The valley stretched out before them, golden in the late afternoon light. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk called. "Sam?" "Yeah." "I'm happy." He turned to look at her. His face was softer now than it had been when she first arrived. The lines of grief eased, the shadows in his eyes lightened. "I know," he said. "Me too. I didn't think I would be. I came here expecting nothing, hoping for nothing." Clara set down her coffee cup and turned to face him fully. "And now I have everything." Sam reached out and touched her face, his calloused thumb tracing the line of her cheek. "Marry me." Clara's heart stopped. "What?" "I know it's too soon. I know people will talk. I know there are 100 reasons to wait." He held her gaze. "But I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of being careful. I want you to be my wife. I want you to be their mother. I want—" His voice cracked. "I want to stop being afraid of wanting things." Clara stared at him, tears blurring her vision. "You want to marry me, more than anything. Even after everything, the scandal, the gossip, Blake, your sister, because of everything." Sam took both her hands in his. "You stood beside me through it all. You fought for my children. You made this house a home again. You made me believe—" He stopped, shaking his head. "You made me believe I deserved to be happy again." Clara thought of everything she'd lost, her reputation, her family, her home. She thought of the long journey west, the fear and uncertainty, the nights she'd spent wondering if she would ever belong anywhere again. And then she thought of this man, this strong, stubborn, broken, beautiful man who looked at her like she was the answer to every question he'd ever asked. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes. Yes. I'll marry you. I'll stay. I'll—" She never finished the sentence. He kissed her, pulling her into his arms, and for a long moment There was nothing else in the world but the two of them wrapped together on this porch, in this home they'd built from the ashes of their grief. Pause kissing Miss Clara. Will's voice shattered the moment. Clara pulled back laughing, her face flushed. Emma had set down her book and was watching them with a small secret smile. Rosie had appeared in the doorway, clutching her rabbit, her eyes wide. "Does this mean Miss Clara's staying forever?" Rosie asked. Sam looked at Clara. Clara looked at Sam. "Yeah, sweetheart," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "It means she's staying forever." Rosie considered this for a moment. Then her face broke into a radiant smile. "Good," she said, "because Bunny likes her. And so do I." She toddled over and climbed into Clara's lap, snuggling against her chest, like she'd been doing it her whole life. Emma came to sit on the porch steps, her shoulder brushing against Sam's knee. Will flopped down in the grass, Dusty curled up beside him. And Clara sat there surrounded by this family that had chosen her, holding this child who called her mama, beside this man who would be her husband, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Peace. Not the peace of having nothing left to lose, but the peace of having everything worth keeping. The sun sank toward the mountains, painting the valley in shades of gold and rose. The summer was ending, but something else was beginning. Something that would last. Clara Sullivan had come to Montana with nothing but shame and a desperate hope for a second chance. She had found so much more. She had found home, and that she knew was worth every battle, every whisper, every moment of doubt and fear. Because home wasn't a place. Home was this man's arms around her. Home was these children's laughter. Home was the knowledge that no matter what came next, she would never be alone again. She pressed a kiss to Rosie's dark curls, felt Sam's hand find hers, and watched the sun set over the valley that would be hers forever. This was where she belonged. This was her family. This was home.